Welcome to the office hours of Stronger in the live format. My name is Tatiana. I am so delighted that you're with us. I am coming to you from my living room in Bloomington, Indiana, where this morning it was a chilly 4 degrees. So I hope you're somewhere warmer, you are somewhere sunnier, and you are staying with us. If you are just joining us, jump in on the comments and tell us where you're coming in from so we can see your name as well. This is an office hours like no others. As you probably know, I work in the academic setting where once a week for about 90 minutes, I set up a time aside in my office where students can come in and talk about comments or content or performance in a specific class. In the LinkedIn live office hours, Eftichia Kalispera from Athens, Greece. In the LinkedIn live comments, we wanted to, for the first time, bring in actual learners that have asked questions in our courses. The course that we're looking at here today is the Finding the Introvert Extrovert Balance in the Workplace. So I would love to introduce to you, or before I just do, this is the course that we have. And together with me is my partner in crime, my friend and colleague, Brenda Bailey-Hughes, who you see in this course. What you don't see here is that I'm on a little stepping stool that I'm given quite often in the LinkedIn studios. So I'm as tall or a little bit not as short as not too far back from her. So I find that as being hilarious too. Pleasure to meet you. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Jay. Hi, Brian, Asia, and Michelle. Thanks for joining us. So, Brenda, this is such a good idea for us to discuss this course. And we listed quite often how different we are. And this was a course we pushed in. We sold this to LinkedIn, didn't we? Or maybe was it lynda.com at the time?
I think it was LinkedIn. I'm not 100% sure on that. And by the way, I saw Michelle in Chile, Florida. I'm here with you. I'm east of Tampa, and Tatiana's not having it with this.
No, just put that violin away. That's right. Yes. So our goal today was to specifically talk about, right, in office hours like you do with your students, Brenda, issues with introversion and extroversion in the work world, in how we interact. Now, I want to give you a little bit of background for us. In the past, we shared an office literally in the human resources suite of our central university place. And the extroversion in me came out so much. I would interrupt Brenda all the time. You probably had requested quietly to be removed into even a closet to be away from me. So we quickly figured out how to work with one another. And for over 20 years, we have worked together, owned a consulting company together, and we've made it work so well because of a lot of the things that we'll tell you. I'm a little distracted here. I'm seeing all the people, Amy and Eric from Mexico, and Amy and
Will from Boston. Hey, Will.
Wait,
Will and I were on another meeting about 2 hours ago. So there we go.
Yes, Will, good to see you. Siobhan was messaging me that she's in Boston, and I told her now that our son, Alexi, is at school in Providence, we fly into Boston. So we want this to be very interactive. We have some great surprises. Thank you, Eric, for saying hey to us too. Brenda, before we take in our first learner who is anxiously waiting in the sidelines, what's your favorite part of this class?
Oh, gosh. Well, okay. First of all, it's popularity. So I posted a quick poll in my feed just saying, hey, Tatiana and I have this class and we're going to have live office hours if you're interested. And I posted a poll and maybe some of you responded asking, do you lean more towards introvert or extrovert? 465 people responded to that poll. We have over 19,000 views of that post. Not all my posts get that kind of traction. So I know that there's something particularly intriguing about introversion and extroversion that's really appealing to people. So that's one of my favorite parts, is just the fact that it so resonates with people. And then I think the other part that I love about this is that it helped you and I articulate a lot of things we had been doing well together without ever even thinking about it. So we had learned, as Tatiana said, to start flexing our styles for one another. We'll let you guess who's the introvert and who's the extrovert on this team, but in flexing for each other, just to make our business and our work together successful over these last 2 decades, we had pretty much already written the course without even realizing it. So we dug into the research on introversion and extroversion and just kept saying, oh yeah, like we do that. Oh yeah, this is a great example of how we do this. So it was such an easy class to write because I think the two of us live it every day.
So for me, the favorite part that I have is I can be quite annoying as an extrovert. I will admit this clearly, and probably I was annoying to you initially before we had a relationship and understood one another. I think self-awareness for all of us is really important. But extroverts, because we're bigger, louder, take up more space, especially in group settings, we have to be more self-aware. And in the Stronger newsletter in January, I wrote exactly that, the red flags that we need to keep an eye out for so that we can better collaborate, we can flex better, we can give a little more, or we kind of know which battles to pick and where to be. So that's my favorite part, is that we talk about our differences and how we're different. Different is not deficient, but then you take extroverts, beware of this, and I take the introverts, beware of this. So if you're interested in that course, I think we'll show you where it is, and you can link to it maybe a little later. But what I
was just going to say, I don't think that extroverts should feel like they have a corner on the market of being annoying. You know, Tatiana owns that really well because she's so self-aware. But I know that introverts can be annoying to extroverts. And in fact, in Tatiana's acknowledgement that extroverts can get under people's skin a little bit, she's actually flipping a script that has been very prevalent in North American business culture forever, which is that extroverts are somehow better business people than introverts. And she's pulling back the layers on that, as well as Susan Cain's great work in her book, Quiet, to say, well, what? And there's another book by another person named called The Introvert Advantage. So we're finally starting to say, well, wait a minute, talking out loud all the time, you know, some of these extroverted qualities are not necessarily the only way to exist in the world. And we both have attributes and characteristics that should be flexed for maximum potential.
Yeah. I just want to say huge thanks for all of you for showing up and saying hello too. So here it is. You've seen it first, the first LinkedIn office hours to bring in real learners and real people from the workplace and other places too. So what we did was we went into our questions and into comments in the courses, and we asked some of our learners to join us, which is a scary thing that we do. First, we had Wanayak, but here he is. Are you back, my friend? Coming to us, get this, do the math, all the way from Mumbai, India. Wanayak works for Siemens. Look at that gorgeous background that you chose for us today, my friend. You and I had a great conversation in a few days ago talking about this. But tell us what your question is that you posted for us, and then we'll spend a little time with you.
Well, Nayak, wait, first of all, what time is it?
Yeah.
It's 1:38 a.m. here.
Thank you. Thank you. So
right,
grateful for your time.
Tell us about your question.
Yeah. So I'm a technical support engineer with Siemens. And so my question is, during my board meetings or discussions or conferences where I'm good at certain topics, and sometimes I'm not good at certain topics. So I'm a ferocious tiger when the topics are known to me, the subjects are known to me, and when the subjects are quite new or quite old, I'm like a curious cat sitting in the corner.
Okay, as soon as he did the ferocious tiger and curious cat, I'm like, we're not changing or asking any other question than this. I love the visual language too.
I love that.
So
because I consider myself as an ambivert or an omnivert.
Yeah, and by the way, we have a learner that has that question specifically here, so I want to address it. So when you know something, you're all over it. When you don't know something, you kind of are more reserved and step back and listen more, right?
Yeah, I do not want to embarrass myself.
Yes, you don't want to embarrass yourself. So you are acting more introverted when you're less of an expert. Brenda, I'll let you jump in on that.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you lean towards introversion. You said you consider yourself an ambivert, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. I would say that your shoes off self, the person you are without any other indicators, but from just that story, I would say you probably lean innately towards introversion, because as an introvert, we like to chew on things, ponder things, be still and reflective about things, especially those things that we aren't experts on, we haven't had time to process. And because we process internally, I think that's the reason your quiet, curious cat comes out, is that internal processing. When you've already thought about things, yes, it doesn't mean, to be an introvert doesn't mean that we don't speak up. He's a ferocious tiger when he knows his content, he's had time to think about it, and he's had time to process. But absolutely, as introverts, we do go a little bit quiet when we need to process. Whereas I've watched Tatiana process, and it's out loud. Like she's talking to figure things out. And so there's not that quiet cat lull when she's processing, but I have that.
It's more of a chatty cat.
A chatty cat.
Speaking of cat, in case you see it, I just want to show you.
Hello, Google.
Yeah, annoying. Annoying is what? Annoying, not ferocious or quiet.
Annoying cat. Okay, so I want to say one more thing about this. When we introverts or ambiverts who lean towards introversion while we're processing, I think it's there's honor in being quiet and allowing that reflection. We also know that in the workplace, though, we have to still be visible, and that visibility matters even when we're quiet. So there's one of the short videos, it's probably 3 or 4 minutes long in the course. We show very specific ways that someone with that internal processing mode can still find ways to become more visible. So this is a screenshot from that video, which I'm going to talk about for just a minute. But so the man in the red shirt, we do a before and after. Like before he's been coached to be visible, he sits down at the end of the table, not the head, but where the woman in the gray sweatshirt is. And then we coach him, and you see him as the video progresses becoming more and more visible. He takes a more central spot at the table. He raises the seat height so that he's got some height to him. He maybe doesn't have very many comments because, like we and Nick said, he's thinking, he's pondering, but he does ask questions. Even though he doesn't make recommendations or talk a lot, he still pushes himself to ask questions. He uses the names of the people in the room, and by doing that, they know he was there, because that's the flex that we need to do as introverts. Is we need to make sure we're still visible even as we honor our quiet, introspective approach. By the way, this video, I don't know if I should even tell you this, because now you're going to get so distracted when you watch it, but all of these actors are not paid actors. They are just people that we grabbed on the LinkedIn campus that were maybe copy editors or videographers. And we said, hey, we need 6 people at a table. Come sit with us.
Wait. And here's the kicker. And one of them is Brenda's daughter.
One of them is my daughter, the woman facing you, whose face you see, she's on the right-hand side of the table. That's my daughter. She had just gone to California to have a good trip with me and do some shopping. And then voila, she gets roped into being this. And we told them they are all nonverbal, because there's a lot of nonverbal things we're trying to point out. And so I said, what you talk about really doesn't matter, because the audio is all going to be cut. So they are actually, I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, Tatiana, they're actually having a conversation about their favorite margarita recipes during this.
Good. But it's the nonverbals. One thing I would want to add, when you are the quiet cat, signal that you're listening with those nonverbals, even taking notes and having a notepad. So you're participating in a way versus when we tend to process sometimes introvert or extrovert, we could be sort of stone cold looking as if we are unengaged. So if you can see yourself on video, and quite many virtual meetings that we have nowadays are recorded, go back and watch your listening face. So even if you process, you don't want to be frowning and looking down and not making eye contact, because the nonverbals that you give away need to match what it is that you're sharing too. Does that make
That's such
sense?
a great point, Tatiana. Yeah, here's how extroverts naturally listen. Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I have. And here's how an introvert naturally listens.
Poker face.
And
Right.
so we kind of have to retrain ourselves to still look like we're listening, even though we were. I mean, I'm listening when I'm in that poker face, but yeah, we kind of have to step up our listening game.
Well, Nayak, we are so grateful that you joined us. You can go to sleep
Especially
now.
at 1:30 a.m.
No, no.
Bless your
Yes.
heart.
Not at all.
I'm going to
I'll
give
be
you the shout out. I'm going to tag you, but thank you so much.
no, I'll be there to the end of the session. I'm quite interested
Wonderful.
to listen to all this. Yeah.
Great. You will
I
stay
like
for
to
the
add.
after party, right?
I only like to add that even the cultures that you're brought up in also plays a very important role of being extrovert or introvert.
Don't get me started. That's a whole
Yeah.
other LinkedIn live office hours. Yes, yes, and yes.
Thank you for designing
Absolutely.
this course. That's it. That is from my end.
Yes.
Thank you very much for
Thank
designing this
Thank
you.
course.
you.
It was a self discovery, and I could conclude myself that I stand somewhere between like an introvert or an extrovert. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So good to know.
Shout out for Mumbai, India.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
You know, his
Thank you
comment about
so much.
culture was really interesting. I know Will is on the call, and Will does a lot of training in the DISC space or temperament space, or some of you may have taken MBTI or DISC, which deals with extroversion and introversion. And the producers of those types of temperament assessments always tell us that culture, you know, where you're born in the world doesn't, there aren't more introverts if you're born in one culture than another. And I think that there's probably truth to that. But I do think how much a culture values introversion versus extroversion it does matter. So yeah. So Will, feel free to chime in if you've got more information for us on that in the chat. Will, we're so glad.
While we were chatting, one of our learners said, Tatiana, it wrote it in Greek. Thank you. Introvert can also be annoying and taken as negatively and arrogant at the rest than the rest of the team. You know, keep an eye out on the nonverbals. I think self-awareness first is really important. And for me, I've been able to flex more or understand or think of where I am and what I need to do. And I get better results because at the end of it. So I appreciate you being self-aware in the way that you shared this as well. So
aloof is a word I hear a lot. You used arrogant. I hear aloof, like, oh, you seem so aloof. And I'm like, oh no, I was there. I was engaged. I just have to step it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Or an extrovert would say, are we okay? Is there something that is wrong or whatever? Amanda says, oftentimes, I often feel like I'm too animated when I'm listening. I shake my head and my hands, exactly what Brenda was talking about. And it sometimes can be animated. At times I look back at these office hour lives and I go, stop it, because visually it can be frustrating or it can be distracting. So we're so happy. Winayak, thank you so much for coming in from Mumbai, India in the wee hours of the day. Our next learner is coming to us from Madison, Wisconsin. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Alex wrote a comment in the course and said, oh my gosh, you're talking to me. Or maybe it was the newsletter I pulled you out from and said, wait, this was for me. And I said, well, why don't you come in and ask your questions? Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you both.
Go ahead and let us know. Okay. I think we talked about the new world of work, which is virtual meetings and interactions all the time, right?
Yes. So my question is, I'm actually headed to a brainstorm after I'm done with you both. And in this new world of virtual meetings, are there different ways to pull the best results out of our introverts and extroverts in these meetings, especially, you know, when we're in hybrid or purely virtual settings? how can I get the best results and the best ideas from my team, knowing that everybody has different processing preferences?
I'll
Do
let
you,
you start,
do you want me to hop
sharing.
in first?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So one, for an introvert, if you want to get the best out of me, I would love to know the topic or the questions in advance. Give me 24 hours or even 2 hours, 20 minutes to ponder it, and you're going to get a much better response from me. Then within the meeting, you said you're on your way to a brainstorming session. I strongly encourage you to do a 5-minute silent brainstorming before you move to the verbalized brainstorming. There's actually research that that's not just better for introverts, it actually pushes the performance of the entire team because it gets a greater diversity of ideas. Once somebody says that first idea, we kind of all start down that avenue. If we've all taken some time to come up with ideas, you get more diversity of ideas if you'll do 5 minutes of silent brainstorming. Plus, it's such a great way to honor the introverts in the room. So yeah, early on, with an acknowledge, I think another, when you're asking people for input, I think it's helpful with the introverts to say, I don't need a response right now, but I'd love to hear from you by tomorrow afternoon. I need that parameter, but I also need the liberty to be able to think about it a little bit longer. So those are some of the tips, I think, for getting the best out of. Oh, and you mentioned hybrid meetings. So one more thought. Sorry, Tatiana. One more thought. And one more thought.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful as an introvert. I want to see the ideas that others are generating as part of the process. I mean, extroverts appreciate this too. So if you've got remote people and you're using maybe a whiteboard or a flip chart for the brainstorming face-to-face, make sure that the remote participants can see the whiteboard. Or if you've handed out handouts, did they get the handouts? Can they see faces? And then maybe they're adding to an electronic whiteboard, but can they see the ideas being generated just as if they were in the room? So I think that's a key piece to it. Good luck with the meeting, Alex.
Big piece of that. Well, even Alex, you told me you're extroverted and you are sharing and brainstorming and how do you get the best results? First, think what works best for you. But I have to admit that even for me, in a brainstorm on a topic that I'm super excited about, it's helpful for me to have that quiet time as well, or to know that introverts have had the time to think about it so we can have a robust conversation. It doesn't work for me either when people signal that they're annoyed by me by coming up with ideas. It helps when everyone comes prepared and knows what we will be doing. So therefore, those memos that say, here are the objectives that we have, and please come prepared or read this pre-read and get started with that. I also need that in order to make the session more productive, knowing what will be coming in too. So there's a way, and I've learned a lot. Part of what Brenda and I used to do in classroom training together, sort of the quiet time. I even liked to play music in the background while people are brainstorming. She's like, nah, cut the music. It's distracting. It doesn't allow me to be quiet in my mind. And by the way, I use that now too. I prefer to be in quiet so I can come up with ideas. If I'm processing, it's okay to have some music playing. So we both become stronger as we process that. Alex, good luck and thanks for coming in.
Thank you
for watching and thanks for coming to chat with us.
Madison, Wisconsin, woo gets a pump up. It's so interesting.
Another chilly weather place.
Another chilly compared to Bloomington, Indiana, not Mumbai, India, where we're from. Our friend Param, who we both work with and know well, said, if asked to retell what was said, probably we would do a better job. No disrespect to extroverts, I'm one myself. But when I get excited to grab the conversation, extroverts may lose out on listening. And I do agree with that as well. It helps quite well to take a breath, take a beat for us and say, so what I hear you saying is, that also allows us to do the, shoot and then aim first, because we get ourselves in trouble by sharing what, as extroverts, we are thinking a little too early. And sometimes that's not probably the diplomatic thing to do in some cases. So repeating, rephrasing, analyzing, you would hear that too. And now you hear my telephone. We do have a landline still as we go
I think
through.
you may be the only person left with a landline. To Param's point, though, I wanted to point out that idea that introverts are good listeners. I think one of the advantages of watching this course is identifying the strengths that you might bring to the table so that you can leverage them. A lot of people as leaders, introverted leaders, listening is your great, that's your secret superpower, is that you are a really deep, reflective listener that doesn't want to grab the conversation because you don't have anything to say yet anyway. So it's kind of easy for us to be good listeners. And then what a powerful way to influence and lead listening can be.
I love that. I'm going to pull up Jay's comment here. He says, to be honest, I find it intriguing. I was a very extroverted person, but in 2005, I became introverted thanks to a person that changed again, 2016, changed another time. It sounds like you have been evolving. So I think there can be a variation with the time and the episodes in life. Does that make sense? I would have to say that I've been trained in the Myers-Briggs personality indicator, and we always talk about the shoes off self. How do you act when no one else is watching, when you are alone in your home? And we always talk about how do you it's not how you interact with others, or where do you find your energy? You definitely would be an extrovert if you come back from a big party and you come back home and you think, I'm going to call my friends to see what they thought about who did this and what happened. I usually do this after meetings with my friends and knowing them. Although the person that may have more of an introverted preference will want a little quiet time, will want to open a book or kind of be by themselves. And it could depend on situations, and sometimes you could be somewhere in the middle, Jay. I do think experiences also being older and being in a different phase of your life can have you tame down your extroversion or pick up your introversion or get you to want to be less introverted. But I would definitely think for the most part, you wouldn't completely switch. Brenda, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, certainly major life events can divert us a little bit from our innate presence, but yeah, typically you are what you are. I do think though that maybe what you're speaking to, and we should stress this really well, is that pulling from our introverted or the extroverted spectrum is based on the context in which we find ourselves. Mm-hmm. So in certain situations, I have to pull more extroverted behaviors because it's what the situation demands of me. Or in certain relationships, to like with me and Tatiana, that we've discovered that allowing more of my introverted attributes to come to the fore is a great balance for the two of us, and it actually leads to higher performance for us. So I think that certainly the people that you're with, the situations that you're in, are probably having you attuned to which part of me should I be pulling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that to that question. Will is asking us, and this is great because Will is a fellow trainer. He says, I found that introverts tend to respond better to questions. What do you think about this? While extroverts respond of how do you feel about this? We're getting further into the thinking and feeling part of the MBTI that I know closely, but introverts tend to process more. Extroverts tend to sort of show how they feel or show how they think externally. That may be a good way. And that goes back to Alex's question, how do I get the best results? Mm-hmm. I still do think that it helps to buy some time so everyone gets a little bit more time in their head to think about this. I like those two distinctions too. We have one more learner coming to us from South Carolina, waiting in the wings. And Juan is our final guest that came to us and said, I work in a really fast pace environment. Juan, thank you, first of all, for coming to us. I hope it's a warmer place today where you are, probably closer to Brenda in Florida. Welcome, and tell us what your questions are.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you and talk to you again after a little while.
Yeah.
I love you guys. So
we love you too. Juan, give them the history. Remind our viewers how you know us. originally?
Yeah, both were my professors in Kelly School of Business. I went with Tatiana to Athens, Greece,
Yeah.
and then I went to Johannesburg, South Africa with Brenda. So part of a great experience overall, but those were probably the cherries on the cake. So
Great, great.
a lot of respect.
Experiential learning. Experiential learning, absolutely. So you follow us. I see so many of your comments. Thank you. Questions. But the one that you had for this one was so appropriate to today's fast-paced world.
Yeah. So I work in the auto industry and things happen really fast, changing priorities before one is out of the picture, you're already attacking the next priority, right? Now, while I understand and respect that introverts require more time to process and react, how me as an extrovert or mostly an extrovert, how can I communicate and extract sense of urgency when we need things done ASAP, right? That's kind of always been my conflict.
Yeah. And from what you told me when we talked before, you tend to also get annoyed if it's not always there. And I feel you, especially as a small business owner, entrepreneur, where things are changing so fast and we have to act. It's hard sometimes to be strategic and thoughtful because we've missed the boat. And I may think the same way as you do. I'm going to just talk. I think I shared this with you earlier when we talked, is as an extrovert, pick your priorities. If you are working with Brenda and you want her to be as quick as you are in response or as high as the priority list that you want her to have something, my recommendation would be you can't have and ask for everything to be top priority, because at the end of the day, that is going to frustrate her. She won't be able to deliver in this way for you. You have to decide to communicate which truly has to happen first in an urgency situation and what can wait. You have to decide what to give up. That's what I share. And then I say, Brenda, from an introvert's perspective, what comes to mind for you?
I think, yeah, really examining your process. Maybe pay attention to Adam Grant. I'm sure you've read Adam Grant's Think Again or watched his TED Talk, where he really proves the value of some incubation time. And granted, in a fast-paced world, that may be a condensed amount of time. We may not have 2 weeks, 2 months to incubate, but I bet you can still find 2 hours of incubation time, given how much better the results and the decision-making can be if we allow ideas to simmer and brew a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so I think working on your own process to say, well, we're having a meeting on this day. I'm going to make sure that I set that day early enough that we don't have to make a decision on it until 48 hours later. So you literally build incubation or thought time into your processes wherever you can. And you know, like I can just hear myself as an introvert looking at you, Juan, and saying, wait a minute. Lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. You know, like that would be my pushback, right? I'm sorry you didn't get organized. That's not my fault. I still need incubation time.
I love that phrase, though. I love that phrase. And it's funny how I made the questions and Tatiana immediately jump out and start, and I saw you thinking and trying to.
I bought her time. I was buying her time. It's strategic.
She was. Okay, but there is another piece that I want to share, because that one I was putting that like squarely on your shoulders. Here's what you need to do as an extrovert to flex. Yeah. I do know, though, that as introverts, one of our red flags, one of the dangers of being an introvert is that we can get trapped in a reflective cycle. I can overthink things. I can contemplate things to death. And so I think you can help your introverts by saying, this is how important, you know, like not everything is super important. This on a 1 to 10 scale, this is a 5. That relieves me of some of the stress of getting it perfect, because there is a perfectionistic tendency to our contemplativeness. Mm-hmm. So if I know this is only a 5, and if I miss the mark, it's not death for our business. It's just, oops, we've got to punt and figure it out. That can relieve some of that unnecessary stress that I feel. So helping me understand the level of importance. I'm thinking about Tatiana's son graduated recently from high school. And I said, what can I do to help put the party together? Because she was having family come in from all over the place. And I knew it was going to be a stressful, crazy time. Her classes were busy. And she said, can you take care of the flowers? All right.
That's a good example.
I start researching. I'm like calling every florist. I've gone to 12 different places to see if I can find the perfect burgundy colored poinsettia.
Colors.
Finally, like, whoa, girl, no, I just need 6 things thrown on tables, you know? Like, oh, okay. Because I had prioritized reflection over action, and her setting that parameter for me of, no, it's not that important. I need 6 things and I need them here by this date. That can help me get out of reflection mode and into action mode. And it's a place where she's so good for me that I feel her pushing us towards action. And sometimes I have to say, we're not ready. We have not thought this through enough. And sometimes feeling her push is a great reminder to me to go, oh yeah, we have thought about this enough. It's time to move.
Or come up with the good enough. Let's move on.
Yes.
This is not as top priority and important. So maybe for you, Juan, think of what's good enough, or if it's an important high visibility piece that the stakes are high, you communicate that and maybe you give some heads up beforehand and earlier on. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps. I try to do. I always joke that here things is like Big Brother. Rules change every time, right? It's like because a lot of happens. Today this is priority, and then tomorrow something comes harder, and then you have to jump again.
And you're in the automotive industry, where I'm sure regulations and outside factors and a lot of supply chain. You're on the floor. Goodness, that's an ever-changing time.
Oh yeah,
that's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, my friend.
Thank you. Nice seeing you.
All right.
Take care.
So we have another comment from Amanda. She says, I feel like you're describing ambivert, ambiverts, and that depends on the situation. Very true. We learn how to flex our style in the way we communicate, Amanda. But I also think of being empathetic to other styles, not being annoyed with them or understanding where they're coming from. And as Alex said, how do we communicate best to get the best out of them? But you're very true. And the more situations we lean into and understand, the more we get out of, and the better we become at it too.
Yeah, I think the distinction there for me is that we may be more introverted or more extroverted, just who we are, what we would naturally do if there were no influences on us, who we are versus what we do. And what we do is more ambiverted. It's that pulling from each side of the spectrum to accommodate the right situation and the right audience.
One more comment here for Jay. He says, not work related, listening to your heart, you can be able to work with everybody, no matter the type of person in this front of you. So very true. I'm glad, Jay, that you bring this up to us. We want to all get best results and work well to get best together and just have best intentions, having good intentions. So true. With a couple of minutes we have left, I thought I wanted to make this comment. I've understood this dynamic so much more, having children that are unlike me in this dimension and learning how to appreciate that a lot more. And being a parent, sometimes we're not only you're extroverted and trying to think of a solution and act because we're more action oriented. It has really taught me to step back and appreciate in a different setting than the workplace setting. As a parent, Brenda, have you seen you realizing this a little more?
I think so. And I do have an extroverted and an introverted child. So learning even learning parenting strategies that would accommodate both of their energy levels and their decision-making process was probably great training ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go with one more question before we finish from our LinkedIn learner. If you're on a team with really strong extroverts, how do you create space for introverts to speak? And I'm assuming maybe that could be both virtually and face-to-face. As Brenda is processing, I would say back to the trip or the tip of allowing, here are the things that we're going to discuss, or can we just take 5 minutes, turn mics off, just jot down a few ideas, and then put them on a Google sheet, and then we share. that's a really important part, that you can do that, because it could be really stifling for introverts, for that need time to process, and they may feel not very well welcomed and included if that happens too much. So we have to be mindful of that. Brenda, your thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of suggestions. One is either assign the role or be the role of gatekeeper. Someone needs to be paying attention to who has spoken most, who hasn't spoken at all, and then jump in there and hold space for those introverts. So in a meeting, you might have, with me, you and Tatiana, you might need to say, Tatiana, can you hold that thought for just a minute? I'm curious if Brenda has something to say. So that literally holding space for your introverts, I think, is really important. And if you don't see anyone else doing that, you do it. And then the other thing, and this has been something that we can only do now that so many of our meetings are recorded, I strongly encourage you to consider doing a communication audit. Go back if you have an intact team that meets often, record one of their normal meetings, one of your normal team meetings, and then go back and on a piece of paper, tick mark every time each person spoke so that you have a tally, and then share that with the team. When I do this exercise, I have had teams that have been flabbergasted that one person on their team spoke 120 times and another person just as valuable spoke 3 times. So with the Project Aristotle research out of Google on psychological safety, I mean, the 2 most fundamental pieces of establishing psychological safety or collective trust are balanced talk time and being attuned to the feelings of others in the room. And so we go, oh yeah, we balance our talk time. And then when you have this objective, hard data that says, oh no, we don't, it can be a real eye opener for your team.
Yeah. And as a leader, as an extroverted leader, this is a great audit to do, because if you're hogging the space and the air and telling people what they could think or might think or your ideas, you've not allowed everyone to share it. That audit is a fantastic exercise and idea to do. Some of you in the questions are asking, what if I start acting extroverted and I'm an introvert? Don't people think that I'm inauthentic? One, don't assume that it's always about speaking. I have seen introverts do this quite well, to say, it took me a while to process this, but in the meeting we discussed this, here's what I think, or here's my idea. So you can even say, I may be quiet in the meeting as I process, but I'll be happy to share some thoughts, or you can do that afterwards. And that's kind of managing your brand. Brenda even discusses that in the video in the course that we share, and that's super helpful.
Yeah, I think it's important not to let this desire to be authentic, which is a good desire, but don't let that become a cage. I mean, or a prison. All of us are growing and developing and changing. And if we say, oh, well, this is who I am, and so I must act exactly like that forever, well, then authenticity has become a trap instead of something that liberates our being in the world.
Absolutely. Well, it's time to say farewell to our friends.
There's so many comments I didn't get to read because I can't multitask and do 2 things at once.
You can read them. You can go back in the feed and answer some of those questions too. Absolutely. I want to say a big shout out. Shelby, our colleague, is also behind the scenes helping us make this happen. Again, this is the first time we were able to bring in some learners on a specific topic. I'm really big on the idea of office hours. The one coming up in March is going to be on the new resilience course that has just posted, that I want to talk about resilience strategies, and I'll follow that up. They will follow a newsletter, the Stronger Live newsletter. Before Brenda and I say goodbye, I want to say a huge thanks. And there is a big promotion through LinkedIn. This is the public service announcement that is sharing 30 different courses for any of you that are looking to switch careers, to switch directions, or to look for a job. And with so much changing in the workplace, I'm grateful that LinkedIn is putting together a toolkit to help you. So we're posting that, the defining guide to searching for the great, to searching in the great reshuffle. things are changing. And since we have so many of you here, we thought we would share some of this. So from the state of Florida and the state of Indiana, we want to say a big thank you and a big farewell. We'll answer the rest of your questions online. Thank you for your time.